Implementing Integrated Education and Training, or IET, sponsored by World Education in an effort to share effective and emerging models in the field. Well, I think we're in a time that reminds us that civics education should be a central part of adult education. Today, we are focusing on preparing people for work. This webinar will highlight variations on the IBEST model. WAYS programs in 3 states have tailored that model to fit their local contexts, figuring out how to work within their own program structures, resources, and partnerships. Before we do introductions, let me turn this over to Ben Bruno to make sure you know how to participate in this webinar platform.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to go over some basics about how to communicate. So only the presenters today are going to be able to speak. Those of you participating in the webinar will just be able to hear what folks have to say, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. And the way we'd like to run the communication is by using the chat box. The chat box should appear on the right side of your screen, but if you don't see it, you can go to the top right area and click the chat icon. It looks like a speech bubble that says chat underneath. And by clicking that, it will bring up the chat window, and you can also click it again to make it go away. So that toggles it on and off. If you find it distracting during the webinar, you can toggle it off. Otherwise, when you bring it up and you're sending chats, we'd like you to make sure that you also send to all participants. So that's a crucial piece there. I've indicated it on the slide with my name, Benjamin Bruno, pointing to what it looks like on the right side of your screen in your chat window. And so it's a pull-down menu, and you can send to different individuals. You can send private chats to me if you have any sort of tech issue that you want help with. I'll be happy to help you. But otherwise, everything else, all participants, not all attendees. It sounds the same, but it's a different thing. So all participants, and then everyone will be able to see your questions and comments. Also, if you lose audio today, one thing you can do, you're hearing things over your computer via an audio broadcast. So if you lose audio, you can go to the top menu and click Communicate and then Audio Broadcast, and that will bring it back up. If you lose your entire connection or your computer crashes, you can just rejoin as you did the first time. And I should say this session is being recorded, and it will be available with all materials posted on our websites afterwards. All right, that's all for me. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Ben. Okay, so the series co-facilitators are myself, Andy Nash, Director of the New England Literacy Resource Center, and Ellen Hewitt, Director of the National College Transition Network. This series was shaped by conversations we've been having about the most pressing questions that we're hearing from the field about WIOA regulations and the implementation of IET. And those conversations led to the topics of our 3-part series, which have been and are today implementing IET in rural settings, which is archived, IET within ESL programs, also archived, and today's webinar on contextualized variations of IBEST. These programs have contextualized the IBEST model to fit the local resources and systems that they're working within. And in total, the webinars include programs from 9 states and address career pathways ranging from culinary arts and building maintenance to entrepreneurship and healthcare. And as Ben said, they're all archived on our website, which we'll note later on, along with the webinars. So, and answers to any questions from the chat box that we are unable to get to during the webinars will also be included in those archives. So be sure to get your questions into the chat box, because one way or another you are going to get an answer. So to introduce the programs and the format for today's webinar, I'm going to turn this over to Ellen Hewitt.
Thank you, Andy, and a warm greeting to the friends and colleagues joining us today. We're really fortunate to have presenters from these 3 community colleges add to our knowledge in the field. Johnson County Community College, Northeast Mississippi Community College, and LaGuardia Community College. Each of the presenters from these 3 colleges has led the adaptation of the IBEST model to fit their local context. although they are all based in community colleges, you can expect to see variety in how they determine their, the programming that would make the most sense in their own communities, how they identified and collaborated with partners, and how they designed and adapted the features of the program. And as you can see just by looking at the states represented, that there would be great geographic and demographic differences amongst each of the colleges. So the way that we're organizing the webinar is that after a couple of framing slides from me, we'll hear from the three programs with, we'll hear from the three programs. They'll both introduce themselves, and then also we'll do their presentations following that. And we'll have a couple of questions taken in between the presentations, and once they're finished, we'll open it up to a fuller Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat box as you have them, and since this is a very large group today, it's unlikely that we'll get through them all, but the presenters have graciously offered to provide written responses to the questions that we don't get to, and those will go out to you along with a link to the recording and a list of the resources noted during the webinar. Okay, so before we meet our three presenters, I'm building up the suspense here. I want to frame what we're doing today with this webinar called Contextualized Variations of IBEST. So I want to start with a definition that the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, I just had to move my slide here, apologies, that the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, or WIOA, set out for the integrated education and training programs, and a brief overview of the IBEST model. So here's the definition, which you have likely seen before. The aim of the model is for adults to receive the kind of integrated services that can most effectively help them advance in a high-demand occupation. And key to the model are these three components: adult education, basic skills, and English language acquisition; general workforce preparation, such as digital literacy, problem solving, teamwork, career exploration, those general transferable work readiness skills; and then occupation-specific workforce training that prepares adults with credentials that can advance them along a career pathway. And these three components are, this is a really critical piece, these three components need to be offered concurrently rather than sequentially. So there are also opportunities in IET. I know a lot of us are working to put our heads around it and what does it mean for our programming and our work. But the IET that stand out for us are, first, the opportunity to build effective partnerships. The required integration of education and training fosters partnerships across agencies and collaboration among providers in order to figure out how to offer well-coordinated, connected services. That's valuable. IET also offers the opportunity of accelerated learning and therefore quicker access to jobs along a career pathway. And this is facilitated by the intensity of services that's created when you bundle services or co-enroll students in education and training so they can move ahead more quickly. And then there's a larger opportunity for the field through the focus on contextualized instruction. IET is promoting high-quality, evidence-based instructional practices by nudging the field forward using contextualized materials and building skills in context, and hopefully teachers will transfer those practices into the more general education classroom. Of course, there are related challenges to many of these opportunities. That is how we make progress, such as that more intensive services are costly, or that some partnerships will limit this access to services for adults without work authorization. And that's why we need to hear from the pioneers, the programs that have been working to figure out how to balance these opportunities and these challenges. And that's really the key to how we're organizing our webinar. So I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of IBEST. IBEST, as we know, I think most of us know, teaches students literacy, work, and college readiness skills so they can move through school and into jobs with livable wages faster. And the work of Washington State Board for Community and technical colleges for pioneering this. It has just been such an important, revolutionary, actually, addition to the field, of which I'm very appreciative. So I wanted to talk about IBEST in a nutshell, and I think some of these three things that I'm mentioning here, also you'll see them reinforced within the presentation. But before I do that, I want to thank Will Durden for his help in the initial planning of the webinar. Will is the Policy Associate at Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. And the term alongside, not before, is from Will. For me, it really captures the essence of IBEST organizing principle and directly connects to the three components of an IET model that I just mentioned, that IET needs to be offered concurrently and sequentially. So the importance of contextualized co-enroll pathways, team teaching, and wraparound services are the key elements, and we'll see how they've been fleshed out and expanded and adapted from our three presenters today. So speaking of our three presenters, I want to hear the faces behind these talented women. So first, on the left-hand corner, we have Susan Johnson. And Susan is a professor of engineering at Johnson County Community College in Kansas. Susan is dedicated to promoting STEM educational opportunities to students of all backgrounds and ages. Before entering academia, Susan worked in industry as a licensed professional engineer, using both design knowledge and communication skills on various complex commercial and industrial design projects. This background allows her to routinely introduce practical problems and solutions in the classroom. She's also the advisor of her college's active engineering club and serves as chair of the engineering department. Just below Susan is Pamela Meeks. Pam has served as the Director of Adult Basic Education for Northeast Mississippi Community College since 1997. She also serves on the WIOA board and is the ABE representative on the local planning committee for the implementation of the WIOA state plan. She was selected as the ABE Administrator of the Year by the Mississippi Association of Adult and Community Education in 2003. And Pam has served as the President of the Association, and last semester was elected as the President-elect for the MAACE Board. So on the right, we have Amy Dulcimer. And Amy is the Executive Director of Pre-College Academic Programming and the College and Career Pathways Institute at LaGuardia Community College. Amy manages a variety of campus-based adult literacy, career pathways, workforce development, and post-secondary transition initiatives designed to serve adult and out-of-school youth. Amy developed the innovative Bridge to College and Career programs, which has significantly increased students' academic achievement and enrollment in college. And also she is at the forefront of designing LaGuardia's highly successful IBEST program, the program that we'll be hearing about and learning about today. So, really interesting people, diverse background from diverse places, and they are now going to share a brief introduction of them and their program to give you a general sense of the context within which each of the programs adapted the IBEST model. And after their introductions, we will then go into much greater detail from each of them in terms of the program. But this is the start. And the first person who will be presenting and introducing herself is Susan Johnson from Johnson County Community College. Okay, Susan.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I've been teaching for a number of years in the drafting and construction management programs here at Johnson County Community College in Kansas. We are part of the larger state of Kansas public education system, which has 26 community and technical colleges. It's wonderful to be able to share with you today some of the great things that are happening in our classrooms. The community college where I represent is located in the suburbs of the Kansas City metro area, where we enroll 19,000 students in credit courses each semester. In the state of Kansas, help for integrating adult education and contextualizing material in career and tech ed came from the Accelerating Opportunity Initiative, funded primarily by the Gates Foundation. As a state, that initiative helped us implement programs for adults who were economically or educationally challenged. The original grant is complete, but the Kansas legislature is a strong supporter of our work, and that they designate now $500,000 per year for tuition for those students. Also here in Kansas, we started using the IBEST model with the Accelerating Opportunity Grant, but have moved forward so we can offer these great programs to many students, not just those who are economically or educationally challenged, but all students. This includes using Carl Perkins Federal Career Ed dollars to promote IBEST strategies in our community and technical colleges. Currently, about half of those 26 community colleges and technical colleges are implementing some form of IBEST model in parts of their curriculum. Kansas has also been innovative in how we administer these types of projects. The governing body of higher ed in the state, the Board of Regents, has combined the adult education program and the career tech ed program under the umbrella of workforce development. By doing this, we are able to combine funding from the adult education sources and funding from the career and tech ed sources for combined training and project implementation. In this way, we help all students succeed. We found in the state that this model is helping with student retention and completion. At the college I'm associated with, we are also starting to incorporate the IBEST model in some of our career programs. I will be talking about those efforts later in the webinar. Along with the IBEST efforts, we are working on other initiatives to help streamline coursework for students, which will allow them to progress as quickly as possible through their program. For example, we've modified prereq requirements so students can be enrolled in developmental courses while at the same time are able to enroll in their beginning career courses. While this is not an integrated or a team teaching, it does allow students to be co-enrolled in those courses. The integrated courses I'll be talking about a little bit later, a few minutes from now. We are fortunate that the state of Kansas, the Board of Regents, fully supports the IBEST model and provides grant funds to promote its use throughout the state. The project I will discuss today utilizes the IBEST model with an emphasis on the faculty collaboration and team teaching aspects. The project started last spring with a leadership grant from the state and was launched in the classroom last August, so we now have data from one semester. A month ago, when that semester ended, we evaluated the project, we made a few changes, and now we're a couple weeks into our second semester of implementation. I'll let you know more about how that goes, hopefully next year. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you so much, Susan. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation. And next we have Pam Meeks from Mississippi. Pam needs to be unmuted.
Everyone.
Now I can hear you, Pam. Go ahead.
All right, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'd like to share with you our pathway, 2 career pathways, IBEST and Contextualized Learning. For the past 20 years, I've served as the ABE Director for Northeast Mississippi Community College, and I can assure you that the road to where we are today was filled with lots of bumps and potholes. Northeast is a small community college located in the far northeast corner of Mississippi. We serve 5 rural counties and typically have an enrollment of 2,800 to 3,000 students. Our ABE program serves around 1,000 students annually. Our road to career pathways and contextualized learning began in 2012 when Ms. Eloise Richardson called and asked me to pilot an accelerated opportunity project through state funds. Now, how on earth could I say no to the one person who approved my annual budget and who had been so good to me for 8 years? So bravely or naively, I said yes. But all of a sudden I thought, what on earth is IBEST? So it was time for me to do a little research, and I quickly found out that basically, in a nutshell, it's dual enrollment for high school dropouts, which includes a lot of financial assistance, stipends, and extensive counseling. So I designed our first accelerated opportunity program around certified nursing assistants, and it was a really successful program. Students went to GED classes in the morning, and in the afternoon they took CNA classes. The next year, we wanted to kind of branch off, so we partnered with 8 other community colleges in Louisiana and Mississippi, and we applied and received for a DOL grant, and we developed at Northeast 3 additional pathways. In In 2015, the Community College Board received a grant from Kellogg's Foundation to fully implement IBEST, which is an IBEST-like initiative at the 15 community colleges in the state. The reason I say it's an IBEST-like is because our community college system still requires that a student has to have a high school diploma or its equivalency before they can receive an associate's degree. Washington State changed all of their rules, regulations, and laws, and their students can now graduate college without ever earning an HSC. So I look forward today with sharing with you some of our highlights and lessons that we've learned along the way. Thank you.
And thank you, Pam. I'm looking forward to that as well. And next we have Amy.
Thank you, Ellen, and for everyone here for joining the webinar. It's a pleasure to see some familiar names and colleagues and also to meet some new people virtually today. Just to provide some background context, LaGuardia Community College is part of the City University of New York system. We're a very large and diverse urban campus located in Queens, New York. We have close to 20,000 degree-seeking students and 26,000 non-credit workforce, ESL, high school equivalency, and adult basic ed students attending classes each year. The majority of our students are Black and Latino, and approximately 40% of our student population are immigrants and first-generation Americans, with more than 70% of all the students reporting an annual family income of less than $25,000. We really do serve a very diverse, low-income, first-generation to college population. Lack of academic preparation as well as work and family responsibilities have historically prevented many of our adult and non-traditional ABE and ESOL students from successfully entering into and or completing professional career training programs on our campus. In an effort to better serve the large number of low-skilled basic education and ESOL students who come to our campus every year seeking career and post-secondary educational opportunities, LaGuardia piloted the first NIBEST, which stands for New York Basic Education and Skills Training Program, in 2007. Since then, we've expanded the model to 8 integrated workforce certification programs. In a nutshell, the IBEST model, as Ellen said earlier, helps underserved populations simultaneously develop basic education and vocational skills in order to enter or advance in a career and to increase their earning potential right away. At LaGuardia, we've developed these 8 healthcare tracks. The slide you're looking at, the top, the programs in blue are ABE vocationally focused programs, and the ones in orange are run by my colleagues at the Center for Immigrant Education and Training, and they are ESL vocational training programs. LaGuardia has had a long history, many since our opening in the 70s, of offering professional and technical education, including our EMT program, our medical assisting programs. However, historically, these programs generally had not been available given fairly stringent admission requirements to our basic ed and ESOL students. The amazing work of our IBEST colleagues in Washington State inspired us to rethink our training and to set new goals around access and acceleration, as well as including the practice of co-teaching in order to better serve our basic ed and ESOL populations. Drawing on some of Washington's best practices, we've customized our own LaGuardia IBEST model to fit the specific institutional structure, resources available, and funding, our local labor market realities here in New York, as well as the particular needs of our students and our community. And I look forward to exploring some of these program design features today with you.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate what you're going to be sharing, as well. And so clearly, these are very different contexts in terms of IBEST starting points and the geographic and demographics of the adult learners that these programs serve. So now that you've had a chance to kind of know a little bit about the presenters and about the programs, let's go back to hear more about how Pam and Amy designed and fleshed out the IBEST model for their programs, and how Susan used the IBEST model to contextualize math concepts through a collaborative curriculum development effort. And so we're going to start off with Northeast Mississippi Community College and Pam Meeks. Okay, Pam.
Okay, like I said earlier, the road that we started on, we've had lots of potholes and bumps along the way. Some of the obstacles that we faced were insufficient staff to operate the program, counselors, recruiters, secretaries, program managers, pushback from instructors because our instructors only make $20 an hour, and, you know, their goal with students walking in, you know, they're having to serve so many, so it's kind of hard when we're asking them to do additional work without giving them any additional money. Also a problem with student engagement. How do we talk students into wanting to do the accelerated pathways and get college credit? When they walk into our classroom, most of you who work in adult ed, you know they got one goal and one goal only, and that's to get their high school diploma. So we had to make our program attractive to them. Student tracking of successes. We're very limited with our secretarial staff, and if you can't put into a database or be able to prove that you've done something, you're really just spinning your wheels. No buy-in from key stakeholders. In the beginning, we had our CTE, financial aid, admissions, those type offices on campus. They didn't see how our program would be beneficial to the school. Input and mandates from individuals who have never worked in adult ed and don't know the students that we serve. We can offer students a briefcase full of $20,000, but if we can't talk them into coming in and picking it up, it's really not a benefit. Also, there were a lot of silos at our local level and the state level that had to be looked at, and we're trying to, we're still trying to continue to try to break down walls. And then lastly, just not knowing what we didn't know, because we didn't know anything about the program. The tips for success, to be successful in developing and operating an IBEST-like program is that you've got to be dedicated, you need to be a change agent, you have to be innovative, you got to be creative, you got to be passionate, you got to surround yourself with individuals who are like-minded, and you got to have a wonderful group of instructors like I do that'll just go above and beyond the call of duty on anything that I ask them to do. You also have to learn to never take no as the final answer. When someone says that it can't be done, don't stop. If they say we've never done it that way, don't stop. Any kind of obstacle or barrier that they put up, figure out a workaround and then go back and ask again. Also, don't be afraid to voice your concerns. After all, it is your program and you know your students. So when someone's coming in and saying, well, you can't do this or you can't do that, or they've got to do it this way or that way, speak up. Let them know your concerns so that y'all can all work together to make it work. At my school, I had very little support from the upper administration in developing our programs, and I had no support at all from the previous CTE dean in the very beginning. They didn't want to participate. They could not see the benefits to the college. All they could see was the extra work that it was going to cause them if they did participate. When you begin your journey, you have to remember that there is absolutely no way to do this without partnerships. It's going to take a lot of people, and you can see on the screen all the different partners that work together with my program to make it work. Now, my department is located in workforce, so I know the ins and outs of ABE and the ins and outs of workforce and policies and everything, but I didn't know anything about career tech and how they had to operate. So when we started our partnership, Lucy Morgan.
Excuse me, Pam, just for a second. I'm so sorry because it's so interesting. You're getting staticky on your phone. You started off strong and then it happened, so I don't know if you did something different. So if you can try to go back to how you started, that would be good. Now I'm going to mute myself so you can continue. Thanks.
Okay, can you hear it? Is it working now?
It's
can
better.
You hear me now?
Yeah,
okay.
It's better.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, we, as I said, when we began our journey, we were working with some more community colleges on a tax grant, and so Lucy Morgan and Martha Claire Drysdale were very instrumental in helping me develop our program. Lucy was a workforce project manager at Meridian Community College, and Martha Claire was the dean of CTE at Mississippi Delta. So both of these ladies were having the same problem as I was with silos and having problems, you know, maybe theirs might have been problems with the adult ed department. So we quickly figured out that each of us had the knowledge in each area that we represented. And so therefore, I kind of served as the specialist from the ABE standpoint, and Martha Claire served as the CTE specialist, and then Lucy served as the workforce specialist on our little team. And we spent hours and hours each week just emailing and talking on the phone to get the kinks out of our systems and to develop those workarounds that we actually needed. And yep, you know, there were a lot of days that we just called and rant and raved, and we were about ready to pull our hair out because we needed the other one to say, hey, this is going to be okay. We knew our specific programs, but we still didn't know we didn't.
Tim, it's going out again, so I'm just going to give you a little heads up every time that happens to bring it back. Okay, go ahead, go on. I just want to let you know.
I don't know what's going on. I'm sitting still, and I'm not outside, so I'm really, I guess it may be our connection or whatever.
But when you talk louder, it's better. What you just did now, it was better.
Okay, all right, so we each knew our specific programs, but we still didn't know what we didn't know. So fortunately, we had some fantastic national partners who knew what we didn't know. So they were patient and kind and guided us through every step. These partners had a lot of expertise in developing partnerships and pathways and PLA. So we attended conferences, and all we were doing was learning, learning, and learning. Now, our WIOA state plan that we have for Mississippi now mandates that ABE and DHS and vocational rehabilitation and Wagner-Pizer, all of us work together. And so we've streamlined our process, and we're calling our whole program Tiger Works. Based on this plan, and can you go to the next slide? Okay. Based on our state plan, all the partners refer people to us, and then what we do is we make everybody start off with our contextualized work ethics class called Smart Start. Now, this is a class that was designed and was validated by our local industry, and they determined and told us what work ethic skills needed to be taught in a classroom because that is their biggest problem in the workforce. So once a student goes through Smart Start, then they go to the Adult Basic Education program itself, and they can work on their HSE, and at the same time, these are the three pathways that we have designed for them to go into, and they can be working simultaneously on these pathways. One is a healthcare IT pathway, industrial maintenance, and microcomputer. Now, our goal is that when they complete that workforce pathway, then they go into our college degree program so they can get an associate's degree. Now, they're designed, our pathways are designed very, very uniquely in that they start out with 2 contextualized college credit courses within the ABE curriculum. So when they're going to their HSE class, they're receiving team instruction in professional development and also in applied business math. Now, our applied business math program class was designed by our CTE instructor, Ms. Angela Mott, who is absolutely wonderful to work with. So while the student is working on learning the math to pass their HSE, they're using the applied math class in the book and those techniques to actually learn it. So they're learning how to apply it. Math is math. lot of times in a textbook when they're just doing a fraction problem or a percentage problem, they don't understand why they're never ever going to use it and how they're going to use it. So having it contextualized lets them do that. Also, we have a free career tryout. This lets a student come in and try the major of medical office to see if they want to do it or if they want to do the computer applications, an IT program. They haven't wasted a Pell Grant. When they get through with those classes, they have national and state certification. They can get internships and they can work with other partners. And we pay for all the fees with anything that they get that's associated with the class. The national certifications that when they come through the Smart Start, they can get Skills USA, too, from there, and work. So, we do it in MOS, we're doing IC3 certifications, we're doing OPEC, all these different kinds of things. We're trying to stack those credentials to make those students employable as soon as they get their high school equivalency. Now, you can ask, was the road easy? No, because all of us ABE directors, we know how busy we are. Was it worth it? Yes. I'm so proud that Ms. Eloise Richardson had the vision to begin the state of Mississippi's IBEST-like initiative in 2012, because now her vision has made it much easier for me to transition into the new ABE policies and procedures that have come down from Washington. So remember, never settle on no and never be afraid to think outside of the box. You'll fail, you'll go 2 steps forward, and then oftentimes you'll come 3 steps back, but it'll be worth it in the end because we are changing lives.
Pam, thank you so much, and I also apologize for the difficulty in my interrupting you. I'm sure that was a challenge, and also to folks listening, and I appreciate everyone hanging in because it's such important things that Pam is sharing, and I've been on a good part of that journey with you, so I just love hearing you talk about it. And I do have a question, actually, that I'd like to speak, and after you answer this question, we'll move on to Susan's presentation. And my question is, early in your presentation, you talked about the potholes and bumps in the road that you started on, and one of the challenges was the initial non-buy-in from the key stakeholders from the college's career technical education program, financial aid, admissions, etc. And I'm wondering if you could speak to how did you create the buy-in among the stakeholders to begin to break down those silos?
Yes, and some of those, we're still working on some of those, but basically what we've done is we've tried to have monthly meetings with these stakeholders, and we've tried, when they would say no or they would scratch their head and say, I don't think we can do it that way, I would always go back and say, well, can we do it this way? But fortunately, I have had a wonderful dean, Willa Jones, who really jumped on board with the IBEST, and she helped an awful lot as well. Because once we kind of touched each office on its own, and once we started kind of breaking down some of those silos from the state level, the IBEST initiative this year is really, really helping because it's statewide. And so where maybe some of our offices on campus were a little more conservative, because we are a very, very conservative college, now they can look at the other colleges, and those colleges have started doing it. So I think it's just gotten everyone a little more relaxed, and with just the fact of change, because that's all it boils down to. You're already doing dual enrollment with a high school. This is just taking it one step further.
Oh, Ellen, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
So thank you so much, Pam. And since I've been on a part of that journey with you, I just love that knowing the ways that and watching how you're able to build allies. I mean, I think you built allies both internally and also at the state level, and then also at the national level. So you're working in multiple ways, and I think gathering information and allies and evidence was a key part to your success. So thank you. And Susan, it's now your turn to present.
Thank you, Ellen.
You're welcome.
I'd like to take a minute and tell you how we came to this point with our project, which contextualizes math into our career programs here at Johnson County Community College. As with most community colleges, our students are very diverse. This seems to be especially true when it comes to their math competency. It can be utterly frustrating for both the instructor and the students when part of the class is easily able to complete an assigned task and part of the class is utterly lost. As an instructor of drafting and construction management career courses, I would often have difficulty teaching to all those different levels of math competencies that I would find the students had in my courses. I knew all of my students had had a math course at some point in their lives where they covered some of these basic math concepts that were needed for the course. Well, therein lies the problem. The math course that they took may have been years ago, or they never really understood it in the first place, or they just aren't able to apply that concept to practical problems. So that's when we come to what I call our math project, which is the project we are discussing today. I'm using the IBEST model to contextualize math concepts in our construction management and drafting degree programs. As you will see, our twist on the IBEST model includes utilizing team teaching and collaboration in a bit of a different manner than you might expect. The first item we tackled was to craft goals for our project. We wanted the goals to be narrow enough to be useful, but broad enough so that we could apply them to other career programs here at the college. The first two goals, targeting the specific math concepts and contextualizing those concepts in a career course, were faculty focused. Well, in other words, faculty needed to address them. The last two goals, easy for students to use and being sustainable, are student focused, meaning will students actually want to use the material and will future students benefit from this project? The core of our project are the faculty members. There are two professors from the construction management and drafting programs, that I'm one of those, and two professors from the math department. We started this project with no clear picture of how the project would unfold or really even what our project would look like. Now, with 4 faculty members, this was obviously intended to be a collaborative project. Normally that would mean that we would all 4 of us get together and we would start brainstorming. But I was the lead faculty member and decided to try to do something a little different. I didn't know if it would work, but I thought, well, give it a try. So rather than having a meeting with the 4 of us faculty members, brainstorming, coming up with project goals, and then moving on to curriculum development, I wanted to make sure that everyone had a really large and profound contribution to the project. It seems that a lot of times when we get into a room and we start collaborating, there's often 1 or 2 members of the group who dominate, and then the others just follow. Oh yes, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. In fact, I know that sometimes I can be one of the ones that is a bit too forceful about getting my ideas out there. So instead of having the 4 of us meet and just begin this project, I had everyone just take a month and work by themselves. And I told them at the end of the time, I wanted to see a fully formed project that they had come up with. It didn't have to be, pages and pages and pages, but I wanted it to be what you thought the goals should be, what you thought the curriculum should be, how we should implement it, everything. So at the end of the time, we finally met as a group for the first time. Each member had developed their own list of project goals, what they thought the best way to deliver curriculum was, a timeline, ideas about how to assess the success, everything. So everyone came to the table with their own fully formed ideas. I think this prep work, with each developing a fully formed project on our own, ended up being truly the key to our success. At the first joint meeting, we each had a copy of everyone else's outline, so we knew what their ideas were. There's actually one faculty member in our group who is much quieter than the rest of us. She had great ideas, and we ended up using a number of them. I truly believe because of her personality, she wouldn't have brought those ideas forward. We would have just overwhelmed her with all of our ideas. So that leads us to our first 2 goals. Targeting specific math concepts we knew students were struggling with, and contextualizing those concepts in specific types of problems students need to be able to solve. Of course, the career program faculty, including me, we were the ones to assemble the list of the math concepts and supply typical applications. I've just given an example here of one of the concepts we included in our project. In construction management, employees need to be able to calculate the volume of soil to be excavated. So obviously, they need to understand how to calculate volumes of different shapes, and they need to be able to apply that in a practical way that they can determine the volume of soil. Before we leave the slide, I wanted to again touch on our method. As the lead member of our group, I was responsible for setting up how our project would be conducted. Being a collaborative project, my first thought was, of course, to bring everyone together and start brainstorming. Probably get out one of those large pads of paper and on an easel and just start listing ideas. But knowing some of the personalities and members of the group, I decided to do something that was very uncollaborative and have the members work alone for the entire month. It ended up working really well for our group. Other groups may work better by working together from the start. I think it's important to try things even if you don't know how they'll work out. I don't think, in that way, I don't think there's really a perfect way to run a project. This happened to work for us. Knowing that group collaborative projects can be tough, right? If the group is full of members who are consensus builders and very open, it works really well. If the group has members who are a lot more assertive, pushing their ideas, or a lot less assertive, or even not assertive at all, I think independent work can help. That was our case. Our last two goals were student-oriented. How do we make it easy for students to use? And how do we make it so students taking the same course in the future semesters benefit? We didn't just want students in one semester to benefit. We needed to make it beneficial to students year after year after year. At our college, as probably with most of colleges these days, we use a learning management system. We happen to currently use Desire to Learn, but we've also used Blackboard, WebCT, and Angel, and they all pretty much work the same. I want to emphasize that the courses in this project are not online courses, right? They are face-to-face courses, and we use our learning management system to supplement our face-to-face activities in the classroom. The 4 faculty members involved in this project, the 2 math faculties and the 2 career program faculty, together developed YouTube videos and note sheets, which we placed out on our learning management system. For each math concept, there is a video, and there's another video which takes the student through how to apply that math concept to a specific type of industry problem that they would be finding in this career course. The note sheets contain a written summary of the material. Just like many things on YouTube, our videos are short and to the point. They range from 1 to 3 minutes. They are also captioned for students who need or prefer reading the text. Again, collaboration between the career program faculty and the math faculty was key in developing these curricula. We career faculty brought our knowledge of the industry, and the math faculty brought their knowledge of how to teach and incorporate the math concepts. Everything we created for this project always leads back to our 4 goals: determining the math concepts, incorporating those concepts into career courses, making it easy for students to use, and making it sustainable so future students can benefit. Going into this project, of course, we had no idea what the outcome would be. However, we knew we wanted to measure how well the students' competencies in certain tasks were developed. The problem is to tease out exactly how successful the new curricula is for a given course. All 4 professors on our project agreed using a pretest at the beginning of the course to measure the students' competencies in the basic math concepts would work well. Then, after the math concepts were applied to industry problems, or in other words, once the contextualizing took place during the class, a post-test was given to test the students' competency in utilizing the math concept to solve the industry problems. Of course, there's 2 sides to that story. One is how competent the instructor judges the student to be, and the other is how competent the student judges his or herself to be. We wanted information from both sides. The instructor judged each student's competency by applying a rubric to a completed set of problems in the pre-test and the post-test. To obtain the student's perspective, we asked each student to self-assess their own competency in the math concepts and the helpfulness of the new curricula in learning the material. Our first semester of implementation just completed last month. We started in August and completed that in December. It's really nice to have math instructors on our team since they love to deal with data and statistics. So far, we've had positive outcomes from both the instructor's point of view and the student's point of view. I'd like to end by saying that this is a work in progress. We've made some minor changes to the way we're covering the topics in the classroom for this semester. And at the end of this semester, we'll have a lot more data on student success. Thank you for your attention, and I welcome any questions during the Q&A time.
And thank you, Susan. I have a question and we'll also have questions for people to put in the chat box, so it would be part of the larger Q&A. But I really appreciate your innovative approach in redesigning the curriculum development process among faculty. I was a faculty member and dean for many years, and I appreciate the skill it took to create what you created. So from experience, I know the importance of it, and I also appreciated how your approach involved faculty's assessment of a student's competency in utilizing the math concepts to solve industry problems. So even the assessment was contextualized. The third piece that I want to speak to you about is that I found really unique, is that you also wanted the student's perspective. Would you just please share a little bit more about the student self-assessment process? Thanks.
Oh, sure. Great question. Yes, the 4 faculty members, we felt that this was really one of the most important pieces of data that we would be collecting, is how the students perceived this process. So of course, at the beginning, we wanted them to self-evaluate how they thought they were in the math concepts. So after they took the pretest, some of them, didn't know the math at all, and some did really well. But after they took that, they filled out a questionnaire where they actually rated themselves of, basically it was on a scale from 1 to 5. What is your understanding of these math concepts? And it rated from, I have no idea what you're talking about, and to I'm very comfortable with these math concepts. So they actually self-rated. And then after the contextualizing instruction took place, and after the post-test, then we had them do another questionnaire where they rated, well, now self-assessing, what do you feel like your understanding of these math concepts is? And they did the same type of rating scale. And then we also asked them on that questionnaire is how helpful was using things on the learning management system. How helpful were the videos and the note sheets and things like that, so we could see if those things were actually helping. And we thought about how can we do this, and a lot of times assessment, you want to really make it quick, so we'll just have them jump on the computer on their own time and do this questionnaire. Well, response rate is always really low for that. So we actually spent time in the class doing this questionnaire. We felt that was important enough to spend class time on, so we made sure every student assessed their own self and the project as a whole.
That is so, what I love about that assessment process, and thank you for going into more detail with me on this, is that not only are you able to help us to see in terms of students' competency as they self-assess, but also ways to improve the program, because they're also giving you feedback in terms of ways of improving the course. So that's wonderful. Thanks, Susan. And now we're moving. You're welcome. Amy from LaGuardia Community College is our third and last presenter. Amy?
Thank you, Ellen. So while each of our 8 IBEST healthcare training programs that we've developed and run since 2007 is somewhat unique in terms of the specific population that it serves, ESL or ABE, the length of time of the program, or even the co-teaching structure, and some other features, all of the program goals in our IBEST and the big program components are the same. Our primary goal with IBEST is to open access to in-demand professions for low-skilled ABE and ESOL students, and to improve our retention, credentialing, and job placement rates overall for all students. Essentially, we're trying to accelerate students' career and economic situation through an educational redesign. Part of this involves picking certification programs that prepare students for viable workforce credentials where there is a local labor market demand. So we always want to make sure that if we're investing in an integrated program redesign, that there is an immediate employment opportunity in our economy for folks that we're training. And also that credential is stackable, and so students can start there and start their career, but move through articulation into another degree program. Let's say you start as an EMT, you get the certification, and then you can transition to a paramedic degree program and earn your AAS degree. For those of you who are thinking about moving to integrated education and training models, I did want to share some of what we've learned about this transformation work and the program redesign work. We've really had to focus our change efforts in these 4 key areas. The first, in terms of redesigning the program components themselves, and by this I mean that we've had to move, as you've heard from my colleagues, to a much more of a team-based approach to programming. So instructors, advisors, basic skills, and administrative staff having to work more collectively and collaboratively. We've had to redefine our collective mission, so making sure everybody understands why we're doing this and why it's important for our students and for our local economy and what it means to have an access model. The other big shift for us programmatically was moving to using data in real time to make both shifts in our program and in our curriculum, but also to serve students on a daily basis who might be struggling. We have case management and regular team meetings as part of the program redesign, and in some cases we've had to lengthen our training calendar in order to make sure that students can do the work and be successful. The second big piece of the redesign work we've done here is to create an intensive student intake and onboarding process to ensure that students were invested and understood their commitment to the career track up front. The third big piece, and you've heard my colleagues talk a bunch about that, is the redesigning of the curriculum and moving to a co-teaching model with a basic ed and a vocational teacher, which is very, very different from the way that we've historically organized our instruction and our classrooms here on the campus. And the fourth big piece really is about providing those support services and embedding advisement and job readiness into our instructional and course model so that when students graduate, they are poised on the day of graduation with their resumes and their having practiced their interviews to go right to work. You can go ahead, Ellen, and switch the slide. Thank you. What you're looking at now is sort of a student view. We call this our IBEST switch. It's really our student view of what happens to a student or steps they follow. And so all of the IBEST programs have a robust recruitment and intake, a contextualized vestibule, a co-teaching structure, and that integrated job readiness and employment, because our goal with IBEST is for students to go to upgraded work immediately. I wanted to spend a few minutes digging into each of these features of our IBEST model just to give you a better sense of what happens at each point and what the student is experiencing. So generally, students interested in applying participate in a robust 3-day process that helps them determine if the career choice and program are a good fit for them, but also gives our staff a chance to assess students' eligibility, suitability, and aptitude for that particular training track. So over the course of 3 days, students are participating in an orientation to the profession that's specific, so they would learn about being the life of an EMT and kind of what that involves, or if they're in a nursing track, becoming a nurse. They would complete an application. They're tested on the TABE for their reading levels. They complete a career interest inventory. And they respond to a number of contextualized scenario-based written questions. That gives us a sense both of how they would respond in terms of their critical thinking and their approach to, let's say, patient care, but also their writing skills. And they also submit whatever documents are required, minimum level of documents, whatever the funder in the program is requiring. So for EMT, for example, they have to have a driver's license, and so that's something we get up front. And finally, they do complete an individual interview as the last step with the program staff. Once students are conditionally accepted into the program, they start what we call here in New York the vestibule. This is a contextualized class taught mainly by our basic skills teacher, who does get some assistance from the technical instructor at that point. The vestibule is really a chance for students to be reintroduced to the classroom and for them to be able to take on some of the more difficult technical content that they'll encounter during the training. In this transitional space, they're developing habits and routines necessary for success in schools, such as being on time, participating in group work, doing homework, and they're being introduced to the critical content and vocabulary, oftentimes, which is very new and challenging to them. The vestibule is rigorous, and it provides a developmental and contextualized introduction in a supported environment to key course content. So for example, in the EMT, they do a lot of work around anatomy and physiology because that's oftentimes for our students very new in terms of the subject, and it's pretty dense curriculum, and giving them a chance to work at it in a developmental and scaffolded way during the vestibule sets the stage for success once the training starts. In the vestibule, students are also transitioning back to school, and they're working out the kinks of balancing life and schoolwork as they transition and getting help from our educational case manager to make sure that they have their child care in place and they've rearranged their work schedules. So after the vestibule, students go on and they start the training, which is a co-teaching model. Like the IBEST model in Washington State, we have one basic skills teacher and one technical instructor who share the classroom. In our models, they could be sharing the classroom anywhere between 15 to 50% of the time. So in Washington, they have a standard about the level of co-teaching that has to happen. We don't have that here at LaGuardia. We've been able to sort of tweak it according to funding and also the needs of the student and the sort of density of the content and the academic rigor of the program. Our co-instructors are expected to plan together. They share a mission in common, so we spend a lot of time focused on the mission of student success so they understand sort of what they share in common as they're teaching, and we spend time defining their roles and responsibilities so that they have, to reduce the potential conflicts that can happen when you are co-teaching or share a classroom. And then lastly, students are expected to move on to employment, and one of the things that we've done is integrate an hour weekly, like we've done with the basic skills integration, for those explicit contextualized job readiness activities. Each week, the educational case manager will enter the class to do resumes, interview skills, all sorts of work with them, so that they're poised once they graduate to move to work immediately. You can go ahead and switch the slide, Ellen. So all of this has really resulted in incredible outcomes for us here at LaGuardia. The IBEST programs have significantly improved student retention, certification, and job placement rates here for us across the board. But the fact that we've been able to open access to our lower level ABE and ESOL students simultaneously has been really remarkable. So this is a picture of our SAVE EMT program graduates, just to give you a sense of our IBEST EMT students. To use the EMT as an example, it's our largest and longest running IBEST program on the campus. We've had 10 cohorts of students, over 300 students. Of those students, 85% have been retained. So when we started, only 50% of EMTs were retained on our campus because it's such a rigorous program, and now 85%, even with the lower level students. We have a 98% certification pass rate on the state EMT exam, so we're really proud of that. And we have an 85% job placement rate in the 3 months following program graduation. So we're really excited about what we're seeing happen here with the IBEST model.
And I'm really excited too. Thank you so much, Amy. I just appreciate the work that you've done to really help move this along to the field, and I know I continue to learn a lot, from you. And we have heard now from our 3 presenters in terms of the basic content that they wanted to share today. And you can see the diversity, both in terms of the programs, but also what they're fleshing out, even though there are some certainly consistencies and same goals, just how it was fleshed out to meet the context that they're setting, I found, really interesting. And now we're going to be moving to the question part of our webinar, and I appreciate the work that Pam Meeks has busily been doing, responding to questions that folks had for her. So thanks, Pam, on her presentation. That was great. But before we move to the open question, I know I'm going to pass this to Andy so she can pose a specific one to Amy, and then Andy will kind of guide us along with the general question posing that you can ask of anyone. Please start by thinking what you might want to ask and putting it in the chat box. Okay, Amy and Andy.
Okay. So, Amy, one thing that I think is so rich about your interpretation of IBEST is this, what I consider like a very intensive on-ramping process where you have your recruitment and intake and vestibule, so that students really understand what they're getting into and whether or not this is a good fit and all of that stuff. And I wonder if you could, I'm not sure if I missed it or whether you didn't say it, if you could remind us how long that part of the process takes, and also whether you lose a lot of students in that process as they learn more about what's involved, and maybe either because they're not testing well or because they discover something else in that process that makes them think they don't want to continue, whether you lose a lot of students in that process.
Sure. So the vestibule can vary in length depending upon the training program. So, and the length of the training program, and also the level at which the students start. So, for example, with the SAVE EMT, our vestibule is only 3 weeks long, and the training is 3 months long. In our NCLEX RN prep, which is training, helping foreign-trained helping foreign-trained nurses be able to be prepared to pass the NCLEX exam and become nurses here in this country. The vestibule, I think, is 4 or 5 months long, and some of that has to do with the fact that the foreign-trained nurses their ESL levels can be quite low, but we still are wanting to admit them to the program. So the vestibule is customized for each training track. As far as, what was your second question, Andy? I'm sorry.
Whether you lose students.
Whether we lose students. Yes, I mean, it's really, that's sort of by design, right? If many of us who do this work know that a critical point for students, whether they're in basic ed or vocational training, is the first few weeks of the program is where a lot of students drop out or stop out, right? And that's true for our college freshmen as well. So they're excited the first day, then reality hits, and so the vestibule is by design this transitional space, and so we accept more people into the vestibule than we have training spaces for in the vocational co-taught piece of the training. And the interesting thing is people ask us all the time, well, are you just sort of essentially selecting the best folks off the top? And the answer to that is no, meaning that most of the folks who stop out during the vestibule self-select, and that could be for a variety of reasons, that they realize the career track is not for them, that they realize they can't work school into their life right now, that their home life and their work life prevents them from pursuing a rigorous training, but that's something you want to know before they start it, obviously, so that we consider sort of a victory. So there's generally very few students that get to the end of the vestibule where they've been evaluated and assessed pretty closely over the course of the vestibule where we say, we're not going to admit that person. And interestingly, it has nothing to do with their literacy skills and their entering literacy levels or English language skills. Oftentimes when we are not admitting somebody to the training, it has more to do with their absenteeism or in some cases their aptitude for the profession. So with EMT, they have to be team players on the ambulance, on the bus. They have to work with a partner, and they have to be great communicators and team players. And in the vestibule, we have a lot of group and team-based activities. And so students who really are not able to communicate well or are loners are not a good fit for that profession, and that would be one of the ways that we're assessing their aptitude and readiness.
That's great. Okay, so you mentioned that the percentage of team teaching that's involved in your program's a range, but I want to ask more about team teaching of our other presenters because Susan mentioned the collaborative curriculum development, but didn't kind of tell us about whether or not that moves into the classroom and how much the collaboration continues after the curriculum is developed. And I don't think we heard from Pam about how much their instructors team teach. So could you go back to that aspect of IBEST and say something about that?
Yes, our classes are 50% team taught. And we meet constantly and try to revamp them, because the plan is a plan. We've developed our curriculum working with our CTE instructors so that we have those courses contextualized within. We work a lot like Amy, and then our students come in during that first Smart Start class. It's almost a test class, where you're just seeing if they're going to actually stick with the program, kind of easing them back in to school. I said it's team time, do those work ethic modules, things that aren't really hard to learn, but just require students to sit down and work on it. And one of the best things that we're finding is that we do them in 4 weeks during the day, and then at night it's in 6-week sessions. But one of the great things that's happening is those students form their own cohort. They all start at the same time. They all take the same test, and during that first week we do that tape test, and we know what skill level they're at. Then we start developing the SIA right then. They start getting those counseling sessions immediately, but they will hold each other accountable. They're calling, if one of them misses, they call and they're saying, hey.
We're having trouble hearing you, Pam.
I don't know what's wrong with this phone. I don't know if it's the building, but our students are they are working together, and they're developing their own cohort, and they're holding each other accountable. So our retention rate went up when we started those Smart Start class. With the closed enrollment, we only let them come in once a month.
Okay. We're having trouble hearing you, so I'm gonna ask you to wrap up that answer, and we'll see if next time your speaking, it works better. Susan.
Yes, that's right. I didn't touch on what the math professors did after we developed the curriculum because they were an integral part of this entire project. As I mentioned before, we helped all the 4 of us, the 2 math instructors and the 2 career and tech ed instructors, me being one of those. We worked on getting the goals together, and then we spent the summer developing the YouTube videos and the note sheets and all the curriculum. But the math professors did more than that. They didn't just stop there. So during this first year, we have the grant money from the state of Kansas, so we were able to have those same math professors come into our career and tech ed classes that we were teaching. And for each class that we're teaching for this project, for instance, like one of the classes I'm teaching, one of the math professors comes into my class for 2 to 3 weeks throughout the semester, different days, but throughout the semester. And that's when the team teaching in the physical space, in the face-to-face class, takes place. So I and the professor from math are teaching together. Now, we only are doing that this first year because we have the grant money, so it pays for the math professors to come into our classes. But what's really interesting for me is how much having the math professor or the math instructor in my class has helped me become a better teacher. So I'm learning from the math instructor how to help the students with these math concepts. So in that way, it's going to be sustainable because I'm learning some techniques from them than I can do by myself in the years to come. So our team teaching is, just for this first year. I'm hoping, right, that that we'll be able to expand this project into more of our classes and cover more of the math concepts as we go forward. And it sounds like the state of Kansas, they're really behind this financially, this IBEST model. And again, they have grant money available this year, so we can reapply for a grant.
Okay, so I don't know if other of the presenters want to comment on the funding dilemma that you just raised, but apart from that, I want to pick up also on what you said about how team teaching, your team teaching with a math instructor really helped you change your teaching and be able to reach a broader spectrum of your students. And I'm wondering, I've heard that a lot from Washington-based, the IBEST folks, that their technical instructors have really, a light bulb has gone off for many of them, and they've really modified how they've taught. And I wonder if Amy or Pam has a thought about that. No?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? I was trying to figure out how to recall in on another phone.
Oh, okay. I'm asking about the impact on the technical instructors from team teaching with an academic instructor. So what they learn about how to reach their students who have lower skills. And Amy, if you're trying to speak, you must be muted because we're not hearing you, but I don't know, maybe you weren't trying to answer that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can try to answer that. I think there's a few things that have happened which have been really great. I think there's certainly been sort of increased understanding about the abilities and competence of our ABE and ESOL students, in terms of our career and professional tech faculty, and seeing them as students who can meet these very rigorous standards just with needing some more support and a program redesign. So I think just the transformation of saying, starting with models that are, no, you can't come in because you're not ready, to moving to an access model where you're saying, wow, like, look at all these tremendous tremendously able and excited and persistent students who are on our campus who want this opportunity. How do we as educators redesign our programs to move them forward faster? And I think that's happened in the professional and technical as well as in the basic ed and ESL side of the house. In terms of teaching strategies, I think, I agree with Susan 100% that both the instructors on both sides of the fence have learned a lot about pedagogy and teaching strategies, and I think our vocational instructors have many more bags of tricks around how to help students unpack dense technical reading or break down, very technical or scientific texts in a way to help them read for comprehension and application and understanding. One of the big shifts that's happened in our programs is, like most higher ed, we have high-stakes exams, midterms, and finals in most of our classes. And I think through this process, the instructors have learned that lower stakes, more informal assessments, more frequent assessments really help move students forward, help them get prepared, help to break down the content, but achieve the same learning outcomes. And so we've moved to a much more robust and frequent assessment process than just the midterm and the final sort of high-stakes exams.
Okay. I think we can only take one more question, and I want to draw one from the chat box and generalize it. I think it was a question originally to Susan about the role of where developmental ed students fit into this whole picture and whether or not programming is contextualized for those students as well. And I guess I'd like to put that to all of you, where developmental education fits into this picture that you're developing.
Yes, this is Susan. The project that I've been talking about is not developmental ed. It's in our career and tech ed. And we do have a robust developmental education department here at Johnson County Community College. And I do know that they're doing some innovative things. I'll have to look into that and put some of that in my written comments that will go along with this webinar, because I'm not quite sure to what extent that they're using contextualizing in the developmental courses here.
Okay, and even apart from contextualizing, are you recruiting students from your developmental ed courses? Is there a place that they have in the whole IBEST or your version of IBEST programming that you're developing?
Oh, yes, definitely. What we've been trying to do, we have been working with the developmental ed department so that when students come in and they say, oh, I'm interested in, the construction management or the drafting program, the two programs that I'm aligned with, that they get sent over to us so that we can chat with them and so that we can get them enrolled, dually enrolled along with their developmental classes, and they can be taking their first couple classes of the career program. So that's what our college has done a pretty good job about that. We've dropped some of the prerequisites that you need to get into our beginning career and tech ed classes, which allows people to be in those developmental classes at the same time. So they don't have to sit there and like, why am I here? Why am I here? I don't get to do anything that I really want to do my first semester. That has gone away. So first semester, we are dual enrolling them in developmental and career and tech ed classes. And that's been quite successful.
Okay. Pam or Amy, anything on that?
There's, I guess, this is Amy. I guess there's two things to say about our Dev Ed, which is all of our programs, because of the city university structure, all of these programs are on the non-credit and adult and continuing ed side. So they're not, students who are admitted to these programs aren't admitted into our college degree programs per se. So two goals around the IBEST model as it's situated on our non-credit side. One is to try to align the curriculum with the CUNY placement assessment exam so that students, when they move from workforce certification and IBEST training and they have to sit for the placement exam, are better prepared for it. So there is some curriculum alignment that goes on around the reading, writing, and math portions. But also, and as importantly, we also have some advanced standing agreements so that if, let's say, you earn your medical assisting certification on the adult and continuing side of the house and you go to work and then you want to come to LaGuardia and apply for the medical assisting 2-year AAS degree, you have advanced standing and you carry over, I think in this case it would be 9 credits towards the major. So there is some, I guess we would consider it maybe credit banking or advanced standing that's going on.
Okay, thank you. I think, Ellen, we need to move ahead and head towards closure.
I think so, and I also was thinking, Pam, if you had things that you wanted to say and were shy about the phone, which I would understand given some of the challenges, is that you can always put your response in the chat box, and I appreciate all the responses that you've already given in the chat box now. So thank you, Andy, and thank you for those questions. It really helped me develop a better understanding of your work. And so I wanted to kind of pull out what stood out for us by knowing ahead of time what the presentations were going to be and what folks were going to be talking about. And that is, to me, the importance of an intensive and robust intake process. The vestibule, I mean, I think that transitions are so key and often a forgotten part of our work with students and in curriculum. The innovative approach to curriculum development and assessment, and I think which is true came through for me from everyone, is the collaborative, innovative, and persistent leadership, the taking of a challenge and turning it into an asset. It's very much appreciated. So now those are the highlights, and I am going to turn this over to Andy to kind of share the resources and kind of wrap us up. And in doing so, I want to thank everyone, our presenters, and everyone who's on the webinar with us today. Thank you. Andy.
Okay, so quickly, I just want to make sure you have an understanding of where you can get additional resources. First up, we have LaGuardia's College and Career Pathways Institute. This is a series of connected professional learning activities that are packaged as an institute, and you can be in touch with Amy at the URL at the bottom. As you can see on this little map, they have been working in a lot of states to great acclaim, and you may want to access that opportunity. Go ahead. Then there are resources that support, thinking about IBEST and IET in general out there. The 2 that we added for this particular webinar at the top. One is the main resource page from Washington's IBEST resources, and you can find video clips there of different kinds of team teaching. You can find various curricula and guiding documents there. Also, COABE recently did a webinar related to IBEST programming, and you can find that webinar archived on the COABE website. The other resources you can take a look at. They're paper documents. The final one here, the IET survey, is a survey that the state directors and CLASP are conducting, trying to gather as much information about different IET models as possible so that people can have access to that. And then there are the World Ed resources, which are our online courses. We have both facilitated and non-facilitated courses, many that are very directly related to aspects of IBEST, including, you can see on the non-facilitated, there are team teaching. There's a non-facilitated team teaching course that you can access at any time. And we can move on because really we are closing out here. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank our thoughtful presenters, Susan Johnson, Pam Meeks, and Amy Dalsimer. And all of you for your engagement with these new challenges, and to Ben Bruno for keeping us all connected online so that we can have these conversations. And I want to remind you that you can find the webinars archived at the NCTN site. The URL is up on the screen, and also at the nelrc.org site. And at the close of the webinar, we'd appreciate your feedback on the evaluation that will pop up, including any thoughts you have about additional support that would be helpful to you as we continue to think about what would be most useful for us to provide. So thank you so much. I think we're ending right on the button, and I hope you all have a good week. Thank you.